Julie here with Sirius Talis Moon, and this is Venus hour Mercury day. Venus is 29 degrees Sagittarius squaring Neptune, and the moon is 22ing in Aquarius. Ascendant is applying to Chiron at 20 degrees Aries with Chiron 22 degrees Aries. Midheaven is ruled by Saturn. And this is, I'll just show, it's in Hebrew, but what prompted me to press record is watching this. Are you called to work with a um, Celtic deity? But that's not what prompted me to press record. Basically, I was shown an advertisement to an investment platform, and they were giving me an example of how I would get notifications from them on stocks that are basically lucrative. So they gave an example of oil and gas, current price $10.27, expecting to be by the end of the month $92, and for longer term $2010. Now, that's the type of thing that would make a person press, okay, I want to invest there. And this is a different type of bubble than the 29 bubble. Because, and to, as a, hi, I don't know you. So, yes, I missed an opportunity for a cat sitting in an apartment by the sea in Ashdod. Now they're preparing for a drill for war with Iran. Oh, it's mine. Thank you. תודה רבה. Recording. They won't. I need them at night. Mom's made socks. Okay. Not to get misconstrued. But here is the thing. Here is the thing. While I'm investing in a completely different type of oils, and there's a company that does import from India, if we're talking about colonialism, and they bring the most amazing, this is Orchid Essential Oil. It's an Israeli company, so I don't think they don't ship internationally. But that's Orchid Essential Oil, and this is so amazing. I have been calibrating on that. Um, Looking at this ad, okay, back to what prompted me to press record. Looking at this ad, thinking about Saturn conjoining Neptune as ruler of Pluto on the degree that is going to be in 0 degree and then 1 degree, on the degree where when Aries was there, we had the Big Depression. And these type of thoughts, first of all, they want to make me wear perfume flowers. Flowers, floral perfumes, because that's the only thing that can get, not poppies. Um, but if I think about an investment bubble, usually when an investment bubble explodes, we usually expect something like a Big Depression. We usually expect something like, okay, the big folks that watch the world move the money from here to there, and the markets are falling, and we couldn't predict the moves of the big folks. And that's something that is probably going to happen. But there's another facet of a bubble, and this is where, if I take a look, and I really like it that I saw it in such a marketing way, if I take a look at the way oil and gas stocks look like, That looks like exponential growth. And what people don't see is that the bubble pop is not coming from a market crash. Because that's something, every simple person can go, let's say, always invest the money that you can invest, not the money that you don't invest what you cannot afford to lose. And then, okay, and even if you take a loan, you have the ability to back it up. This is how Lev Leviev was able at the subprime crisis to dig into his pocket and pay his at least some of his debt, which was a great PR move. Um, because he was a solid investor, okay? And is I think with the extortion calls today is not even allowed. But um, but when you think about the bubble pop, then one can say, okay, you go short on half of it and reinvest. You go short on half of it and reinvest. You close what you can close, and then you have the short term and the long term, and you can play with that. And if they're in it, and if a bubble pops, you still live like Rockefeller when his company got dissected into 34 companies, because he just reinvested and exponentially grew his own part of the 34, and nobody cares that it's not the entire 34 when the exponential growth is still doing even better than a monopoly that could have collaterally collapsed, but partially because nobody needs oil. Now, okay, Nikola Tesla preceded Rockefeller, and if we talk about energy, and Nikola Tesla was the person that patented the free energy invention. So that is even before that. Um, Now, the bubble pop of oil is exploding in a different way, and that's more like the weapon industry bubble pop. It's not for nothing that Schindler, at least, has been, in retrospective, said to have manufactured defective bullets. Um, Bless you. I think about the fact that NATO works with Elbit, which is an Israeli weapon company. And the EU declared Israel committing genocide. So, oops, the slurping. Now, when an oil bubble pops, it basically means that you open the faucet, or and it's Emir Kusturica. They're gonna need to put the toxins somewhere, the byproduct of oil manufacturing somewhere. It's gonna end up at something that they market as good for your teeth or kills cancer. Chemotherapy is effective at killing cancer. It more often than not kills people as well. If they got out alive, they'll say they're a hero and they got over cancer. But um, yes, I hope I'm not triggering too many families. There are alternative ways to chemotherapy. And by the way, King Charles, upon the first Neptune ingress, was trying something different. So trying a new technique. Now they are hiding what was the technique. Um, there are more cures for cancer that are not anywhere near as invasive than one can imagine and are way more effective, but the money stops every time there's such a research. And then the people, and you know, cancer is first frontier in medicine. First frontier, basically, when I say first frontier, I mean the ethical standards are different. For example, most of the things you hear me talking about, the first frontier, because it's a life and death issue, they on the scale to say that is more important. Um, and first frontier when it comes to experiments in medicine, there are way more things that can be done than something that is not a lethal situation or a life risking situation. So, and so when people that were supposed to die go into remission and the budget stops and they return to die, and there are Googleplex experiments that were done and researches that were done were stopped in this exact fashion, um, then that's a big deal. And it's a different type of bubble pop because, to be very honest, I'm not one of the people that have, how should I say that? When we learn to manifest and when we learn all the entrepreneurship skills, it's also about connection with our essence of desire and um, not shying away from wanting or from wanting to be rich or for wanting more in life. It's like, and understanding even that not that suppressing our wants and needs and desires is actually unhealthy. Okay, I'm not talking about, and here is the thing, with that comes the almost tantric embodiment that goes into what's underneath. So, what would be my desire if I wasn't growing in trauma, for example? Um, and this is why when I take a look at current price $10, by the end of the month $90, longer term $2010, and something that I know is traded, that doesn't look too speculative. It's looking like an authentically booming market because there are actual resources or natural resources that are booming. And I want to also address the fact that the sensory experience with that is igniting the dopamine. And dopamine addiction, the spike of dopamine upon investment, which is a form of gambling, which is why they get people addicted to drugs, sex, and investment bubbles. And with that particular spike, there is a desensitization to the ecosystemic, the casualties. What is this stock? What does it mean? Not just if it's actually profitable or a scam, because it's a different bubble pop. It's not that you're not gonna have the money for more. Like, it could be a scam because it's not a real program and the money was stolen. But if the money really goes into the stock, it's not that you're not going to have the money. Even after currency changes, I mean, investments are supposed to beat inflation. It's a different, more intricate type of bubble pop because it gives you the utmost illusion of financial security and financial freedom, and not by um, passive income, but by looking into the market sector and understanding the market sector. And then there's no water. The food is not nourishing. Even the King of England, that owns British Petroleum, which was a part of Standard Oil, got cancer, which basically means that he was exposed to way more toxins than food. That's not a homeless, nutritionally deprived person. Those are types of bubble pops that people don't see because you're gonna have the money, you're gonna have the mansion, you're gonna have the jet plane. And then you see what medicine your investment prescribed to the type of ailment that it causes, which is something that, to be very honest, I don't wish upon my enemies, which is why I talk about that. And my prediction with Saturn Neptune in 0 degree Aries is that the bubble pop will not just be the tariffs. Okay, for example, um, there are people trying to reach, there was a scandal at the French postal office, but people are trying to reach the Israeli postal offices because they order something and then they have to pay taxes that they didn't predict. And so, if in the past, let's say I would order something and not consulting with me, a company would write, let's say, I don't know, how much does it worth? $10. And to be very honest, it wasn't that much. It wasn't crossing the tax bracket, so I wasn't worried about it, and I'm not in a position where I should be. But if 2, 3 years ago that could still be done, then now not anymore. And companies see that and they stop offering. It's not that they offer that, it's that they do that when a person, they do that as a service to international sectors. But then we have people asking, saying, wait a second, I ordered something, let's say 220 shekels, and they ask me to pay 500 shekels when the 220 is not even crossing the tax bracket. And and that's definitely something that the tariffs are changing. Um, but also now Think about the type of things that you know. Think about Amazon, Etsy, even iHerb. That's a different type of bubble pop with the tariffs. I remember when I talked about shipping companies a while ago, and I had to combat a lot because something was coming. But the other bubble pop, so of course, when something like that tariff happens, we can predict Amazon stocks to drop. Not only that, Uranus is still in Taurus. When it gets Gemini, we have labor strike here, labor strike there, labor strike there. It's going to be a crescendo of, of stocks drop. Now think about labor strike in oil factories and mining factories. Why did the Swedes have, that was one of my essays, how did the Swedes develop the In Tax We Trust? They wanted to appeal to the miners, and they had to give them, you know, mining is a very difficult job, and they had to give them something that was lucrative. Okay, just like Dutch East India created the first life insurance because the spouses would have difficulties to send their husbands on expeditions. Um, when they had 45% of a chance of returning. So this is the first life insurance company, and yeah, people, the expeditions in Dutch East India were chances of 45 chances of a person to return alive. And the spouses or the families were offered insurance that was a life insurance, and the company was traded, which basically was an inspiration to, first of all, the entire American flag. Vogue was the inspiration to the entire American flag, and to the entire enterprise that we call stocks. So again, if they're always, I'm not an expert, okay, on that topic. I get my information from people that have studied that. So probably there can be discrepancies because they try to deliver the information to the level of a commoner that can watch, let's say, the financial historians or the financials, um, and get educated. Of course, what's missing is the cloning projects, the occult, the energy harvesting, and so on and so forth. Um, but when we are talking about these things, these bubbles popping, it's not about, oh, the money is funneled elsewhere. And again, it's not that that's not going to happen. We're going to have the tariffs. We're going to have the market moving. Okay, the usual stuff that they do that is orchestrated and designed. And they're going to have to surrender the results because people are going to have different market behavior than expected. Remember the Robin Hoods? where they show they can move the markets. But here is the thing. If they move the markets and they just keep Standard Oil, for example, alive, when it's supposed to be dead to reinvest, okay, the way we saw with Palantir a while ago, that the stock went down. One of the founders went short on it to later reinvest in his own stock to basically bring it up. He got short. Okay, now here's what happens: that those things are all things we can pretty much look at a couple of episodes of. We can be, if we binge watch the historical financial, or the financial historian, or the coin financial, or one of the many AI channels there, or not AI channels that exist on YouTube, the way we would binge watch a show in Netflix, we're probably more in the know for most of these things. But then there is the real effect where all these things can be addressed. Identifying, if we look at the astrology and we see the market, we can identify something and go short on something. It requires, it's not passive income, okay? It requires skill, but all of these skills can be learned. There are the one sudden days, but if people manage their investments manually, not by letting somebody else do it, they can create, basically, they can go short, they can create, they can cash in, they can liquidate at any given time. And in fact, I think that the thinking about, if I think about investments, and I'm not an investment consultant because I'm not an investor myself in that particular um, area, since the entire market is convoluted into a bubble pop after bubble pop. Okay, we basically do not have a real feasible stock market that doesn't have a well-being bubble pop. One can generate that if they're very diligent, and begin to move the money every single day, like it's going to be the Great Depression, and like it's going to be the uptick at the same time. And if they're diligent enough and grounded enough and so on and so forth, and they don't go by these dopamine peaks and so on, probably they can get a good skill out of it. But here is where the bubble really pops. And let me tell you something. When I tried to go and dig half moons in the slopes towards the Dead Sea, so it's a lucrative investment of energy. Because if I build small dams and half moons, it's rewilding, the water slope becomes less prone to floods. It's both life saving for the people there, fantastic workout for me, and it's not doing anything unnatural or unnative to the land. Um, and that's a great form of energy investment. Those of the things that would grow there would be edibles. We will have clear water. Okay, that's a lucrative investment. It doesn't. It doesn't. We don't see it in monetization. It's not impossible to monetize, but we don't see it in monetization value. Even and you know what I think about investment? If we take out the money, is it still a good investment? When I used to edit student films, then one trick we would do in the editing room is take down the entire soundtrack and just watch the visuals, and then do the opposite. So when you think about investments, if you want to know if something is a good investment, take out the money component. And this is where the energy flows. Otherwise, you're invested in a bubble of energy harvesting, which is set to pop. It's basically set to funnel, how should I say that? Is set to do economic hitmanship that only those who will do extreme form of war crimes and crimes against humanity um, will get to maintain the dividends or maintain the in the know. And then there's no amount of drugs in the world that can and this is how money and drugs come, oil and drugs come to the fore. That was the constituents of a century of Gladio. Before United States, it was Britain that got China addicted to opioids, and then it got to be Great Britain. But for but then the king he suddenly has cancer, um, because he's missing Neptune, life-saving Aries and Saturn components. That's the agriculture. Before the agriculture, Saturn, crops, Aries that grow even on arid land without watering, without irrigation. Okay? Saturn, crops, agriculture, Aries, arid land. The crops that grow on arid land. Now, where do we dig the oil? Right now on arid land. Dead Sea, one of the major zones for Standard Oil, um, is surrounded by land that was arid and is actually rewilding. That's what people. All the while we have deforestation in Europe. I've discussed deforestation and their connection to ritual abuse and the policies that are born from ritual abuse. Somebody need to dig some half moons in. It won't work if they don't abolish ritual abuse. Okay, this is where my project in the Dead Sea got stuck, because I had to be informed on what is happening in the forests. And by the way, that's the first time that I saw something that either tried to emulate aliens I wasn't seeing that. It was just like weird energy. And I'm like, okay, what's happening here? Well, they're thinking to dig oil there. Oh, so I had a conflict of interest with Standard Oil. You see, if I had, it's not that I don't have enough, but very likely if I was busy eating sushi today, there would be greater intervals between. Um, okay. I cannot particularly promise that I wouldn't try to dig a small dam in the slopes of the Dead Sea, okay? But but definitely I would get relatively tired and go back to eating sushi, and the balance between work and rest. Now, how do you think the health situation of the miners of Standard Oil in the Dead Sea is going to be like? Normally, we would advise, Arad is 500 meters above sea level, and usually people before they had the Rotem, the polluting industrializing, but usually in that particular zone, if somebody has, let's say, a lungs issue, okay, then we say then we say a bathe in the Dead Sea, go and have a Zimmer in Arad. Um, it's not going to be a good advice for a miner that got this problem with being a miner for Standard Oil, Chevron, and so on in that particular Dead Sea zone. I mean, I can't just tell them, well, I heard that the vacay in Arad is very good for this type of health situation. I think that. And so what we're going to have is a very weird type of bubble pop, because we don't expect the bubble pop to look like booming mansions, summer houses, jet planes, and so on and so forth. But where do they go? When they drill the Dead Sea, they're taking the place that you're told to go to when you're suffering from the toxins of Standard Oil elsewhere. It's so much so when I was digging a half moon, a pack of neighbors immediately sent the person to ask me, wait a second, are you planting something not native to the land? And I'm saying, no, the whole point is to regrow the native crops to the land. And they say, okay, because they're so fearful for the climate. It's a different type of bubble pop. And why am I returning to that particular ad again? Because the, there, to see the advertisement, how lucrative it's looking. And indeed, those are not stocks that are not going to do well financially. It's Gilded Age level of bubble pop, because you're gonna have the house, you're gonna have the mansion, even you're gonna have the jet plane, you're gonna have the summer house, you're gonna have the vacay. But when you get sick, the place they tell you to go to heal, that in the ruin of that, you invested, and nobody bothers to tell people that. Feels like, yeah, it's polluting the oceans. It's probably gonna have effect on the food, food, and water. Are you going to have enough money for water after the? Yeah, filter my water today. I mean, a lot of people in Israel, they filter their water today. It's not the same filter. It's not the same costs. You know, when electric cars just got into the market, and everybody were promised, oh, the charging is for free and so on and so forth, and it comes with the car. Now, that's red. That's blue ocean to red ocean. Blue ocean, nobody knows that product if we don't really, really, really make it impossible to not have it easier to have our technology than the previous one when it comes to the habits. Okay, one of the biggest, and in fact, creating habits, or habits creating technology, is one of the most lucrative things. This is why when I've learned a tiny bit of programming, immediately I was looking into the market of positive habits building apps. And that was a booming market. And by the way, up until today, I don't have my toothpaste and my toothbrush in the shower. No, they're sleeping with me if needed be. Because a person like me can wake up 3 a.m., 5 a.m., what happened? Some dumb fucking Ekvelt is doing a ritual. Okay, what do I do now? Record a podcast, 5 a.m. I'm out of the house. Okay, what? Who remembers? Well, wait a second. Let me just brush my teeth before I go. Amazing. I have a cup to spit onto, and and get the fuck out. Sometimes without even the water. Okay, that's habits building for survival situations. Now, if that product, now here is the thing, there are many things. Let's say there's a certain company that gave the example of a candy store to their talisman. And if you think about the candy store per se, it's kind of like, oh, why would people, it's not healthy, it's not this. Well, if they if they join it, okay, let's say, I don't know, you buy a microwave and they give a nice candy, okay? So that sets you apart as good service, particularly we're talking about um, Western market, but not necessarily only Western market, but Western market. Okay, you get your order and you get, some people love to get all these new things. So that's something that people always need, and everybody has a startup, so everybody's gonna need that nice sweet little candy. And and if they can rebrand the candy or make it their own brand candy, that the company that sells that is probably unless they have to murder and rape children. Right now I think all of them need to bury one living child with one dead child on the property, to basically even have kind of like, when you with the seizures, when when you cut the rope, when you have this new business or new launch or new ship, that's the. And I wish I was joking. I wish that was just a dream. I wish that was some Delulu conspiracy. It's not. And so much so it is not, that it's impossible to open a business. The people that tend to that, and you know what? The people that tend to that, they have the bluest of blue oceans, but they will tend to the thing that nobody tends to. And they will make the kind of wealth that nobody in quite some millennia made. It's not easy. People are going to tell them they're psychotic, they're psychiatric, they're psychopathic, they're schizophrenic, they're sciatic, they're. But that's the thing, that when they take down the money line, the bubble doesn't. If you take down the money line from Standard Oil, you have extortion cult, cloning farm, um, pedophilia hub, megalithic boom of crimes against humanity by all the who's and who's. How do bubbles pop for the aristocracy? Guillotine. And it's their people that do that. Nothing. I just wanted to learn about financial freedom, but but it's got me, and with Saturn about to ingress into Aries.